like for you to tell me now that you're under oath any factual information you wish to, and opinions that you wish to give me on this matter. And then Mr. Willard or the other counsel will be free to ask you questions on cross-examination. So I'd like to hear your side of this.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. It's basically, I feel that, and again, I heard what you said in terms of the fact that I have to prove that I was a board member that will, if I was reseated again, would not be able to help the district maintain its accreditation
That's the way that statute
So that's the way the statute read.
When did you go on the board? You were elected in 2009?
2009.
Was that a special election? That's kind of an odd year. Is that?
No.
It's just that's the normal year-term election?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you were a 3-year term? You were re-elected?
It was a 4-year term. Now it's 2. So in 2012, I ran again and was re-elected, but this time it was for a 2-year term.
Okay. And are you in a district, or are you countywide, or is it a district?
I am one of the 2 countywide districts. There are 9 seats. District 8 and District 9 were the countywide seats, splitting the district in half.
And which one are you again?
8. And in 2014, there'll only be 7 seats with the elimination of the 2 countywide.
So went through a redistricting process?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me jump in and ask you some questions. Okay, it might help you kind of get started. What is your background? You mentioned you were an educator for 30 years. Tell me about that.
Over 30 years. I worked 25 of those years in DeKalb County.
Okay.
And I came to Georgia from Massachusetts. So the rest of my years, or the beginning of my career, was in Boston, Massachusetts. When I came to DeKalb, I had various roles. I was a teacher.
Elementary, middle school?
Elementary special education teacher.
Okay.
I was a instructional coordinator, family support specialist, teacher support. I trained for the state on assessment instruments for teacher certification. I retired from the school district in 2004, and at that time I was the director of Title I, which is a federal program.
Okay. All right. And how many of your years were in the classroom? Were you actually in the classroom?
8 years.
8 years. Okay. That was 5 in Boston, 3 in DeKalb?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it would be 5, 6, 7. I only spent 1 year in DeKalb and received a promotion.
Okay.
I worked for the teacher performance assessment instruments. That was a teacher certification.
Mm-hmm.
Still part of DeKalb County, but
Okay. So you were in the classroom, really, as use my colloquialism, a good old-fashioned teacher for just 1 year, and then you went into
in DeKalb.
In DeKalb.
Right.
For
well,
1 year.
1.5, 2 years.
Then you went into the instructional coordination work.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. What's your educational background?
I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in physical education, special education from Boston University. Received a master's in special education from Northeastern University. Received a specialist degree from Jacksonville State University in Alabama, and my doctorate in administration at University of Sarasota.
Okay. Now, I have not seen these reports. I will read them, obviously, before making it giving advice to the governor. What in that report, if anything, can you break down for me what's the things that are in that report that you dispute? Are there factual things that you dispute?
Well,
or is it more of an opinion assessment that they make that you dispute? Or
it's the role of the administration and the Board of Education. The Board of Education, on the one hand, was accused of lack of oversight.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the one side.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, they're accused of asking questions. Well,
Mm-hmm.
how do you oversee
Right.
if you don't have the proper information? Because
Right.
you are required to make decisions that cause you to vote in certain ways.
Right.
And if you don't have all of the information, how do you do that? Also, the report makes accusations, but it's never specific. At times, it will say board chair. Well, then you do know who the board chair was at the time. That
Were you the board chair?
No, no. It does make accusations and will say, it doesn't name a person, but it will say board chair. Well, you know who the board chair was, so then you know who that is.
Mm-hmm.
Then other accusations come out. You don't know who it is. So
Mm-hmm.
when I read the report, I read it paragraph by paragraph and would check it off and say, well, they're not talking about me. They're not talking about me. But yet, when it was used as an instrument to suspend, I went out the window with everybody else.
Mhm.
And I asked in the hearing before the State Board of Education in January, I asked in February, I asked Dr. Elgart.
Now, who's Dr. Elgart?
He is the CEO of Advanced Ed SACS.
Oh, he was SACS.
Yes. What did I do specifically? First of all, you can never improve on something if you don't know what it is that you did.
Mm-hmm.
And no one to this date has ever given me an answer. And I can't find the answer when I look and read this report. Because, I mean, you of course would just have to take my word for it. I didn't do any of these things that we're accused of. I was part of the board during that time, and I take full responsibility, and I take my position seriously as a board member. So I'm not trying to put off any guilt on someone else and say, I'm squeaky clean, but I'm saying you have to tell me what it is, if you're accusing, making accusations, that I'm guilty of, and no one to date has done this. And again, this, you will have to excuse me if I'm with hearsay. Dr. Elgart has said in two board members, one who's sitting in the audience now, that I was not guilty of anything. He knew that it wasn't all board members. But again, it was a broad brush that was used to sweep out.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out.
Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a lack of specificity per, at least you. There was a lack of specific, Dr. Speaks ran the red light. There's
Or
a lack
anybody
of that.
else.
Okay.
Yeah, or anybody else in there.
Or anybody else?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I'm just here to defend myself,
Right.
but yeah, or
Okay.
lack of anybody else. Again, if when you're reading it says specifically board chair, then you know who that is, but other than that.
Who has been appointed in your place?
I believe her name is Miss Karen Carter.
Do you
Don't
have
know.
anything you want to tell me about, or any opinion you want to express about the functioning of the board at this time with the new appointed board? Any
You know,
pluses and minuses you want to comment on?
I really don't have an opinion about that, the pluses or minuses. I couldn't say that they're not doing a decent job of maintaining, because that's exactly what I think it is. Some things that I hear that they are rendering decisions on, or things that were before we were suspended. The 6 people were suspended along with the 3 that are still there. And if you would allow me, I'd like to say something about that too. But
Sure.
These are things that were already set in place to happen, and because the board was working to rectify the required actions outlined in the Advanced Ed report. So, of course, it sells newspapers, and it's good in the media when you hear that the new board, and that's the comfort, and I think that that's great. The concerns of parents about the accreditation for their children in the school system. But it's not as if they have magically pulled out any of these ideas and now are implementing it, and the past board was just so far out of line, and so far there are things, of course, that we needed to work on. If I were to be reseated, I would work with the present board. I have absolutely no problem with that.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I was going to say, in the Senate Bill 84, the statute, it's section 20-2-773, and this particular section talks about a local school system if it's placed on probation and what the governor can come in and do. As we stated, this code section shall apply only to local Board of Education members elected or appointed on or after July 1st, 2009. Doesn't say anything about any board members that were re-elected. Not re-elected, elected.
Newly elected.
Yeah, newly elected after that time.
Yeah.
So it seems as if there was interpretation of the statute to keep certain people on and others could be removed.
Okay. Was that interpretation by SACS or by the governor's office?
Governor's
The
office.
governor's office. Okay.
And if I'm not, if I'm correct, I remember, and again, I always question what I read in the newspaper, and I know that there's always more to the story, especially since 2009 when I became a board member. But I did hear and see Dr. Elgart say when the governor suspended that he's moving a little bit too fast, because we had, in his opinion, we have...
Yes.
Kevin Bradford for the Attorney General. I want to give her plenty of leeway to say what she needs to, but to the extent that she is testifying to admitted hearsay, we do have Dr. Elgart here. We can ask him some questions, so maybe she can limit these questions for cross-examination of him. That might be more appropriate.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you can stay away from the hearsay,
Okay.
that would be helpful. And you will get a chance to talk to this Dr. Elgart. So perhaps knowing that, we can stay away from that. But go ahead.
I think that's it.
All right. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, just a couple of questions. I didn't introduce myself fully before, but I'm Kevin Bradbury with the Attorney General's office. I'm also seating with Mr. Willard. Dr. Speaks, you testified that you were part of the board, you take that seriously, and you take responsibility for the board's actions. Is that correct?
As a member of the board, there were 9 of us, and each of us has 1 vote. So even if I voted against something that the 5 members voted for, after the vote is taken, it's my responsibility as a board member to support the board.
So yes,
Yes.
you take responsibility for the actions of the board. Are you familiar with the expression that there is no I in team?
No.
You're not familiar with the expression there is no I in team?
Oh, I in team. I thought you said I in team.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
no acronyms
I
or
in
anything.
team.
I in team.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. Do you agree with me that the actions of the board can impact the public's perception of the board's image?
Can impact, surely.
You'd agree with me that the decisions of the board can affect the students of the district and the stakeholders?
that you said, say that again, I'm sorry.
Would you agree with me that the decisions that the board makes impact the students in your district?
Yes,
Would you agree that they impact the students in the entire county?
yes.
Okay. You said that no one had, to this date, given you an answer on what you had done wrong.
Specifically what I did, correct.
Specifically. Okay. Let's talk about some of the Advanced Ed reports. Since you've been on the board, Advanced Ed has done 3 different reviews: January 2011, March 2012, and October 2012. You agree with that?
Yeah, around
Okay.
that time. Yeah, I don't know the specific dates off the top of my head, but yes.
Okay. And part of the Advanced Ed reports is alerting the board to specific issues that there needs to be improvement on. Isn't that right?
Yes,
Okay. In March 2012, Advanced Ed said that the board needed to establish and enforce a policy that board members honor the chain of command when communicating with stakeholders. Does that sound familiar to
Yes.
you? Okay. Would you agree that that kind of puts you on notice that the board needs to improve something?
yes,
Would you agree that that puts you on notice that the board needs to improve something?
yes.
What actions did you take to implement that recommendation?
First of all, I served as chair of the policy committee for several years, and that policy committee was established to review. There were over 200 policies in the CAB, and to review all of the policies to make sure that there weren't any outdated policies that needed some sort of tweaking, policies that needed to be created. So it was an ongoing process. My assumption is it's still going on now as we speak. They're embedded in other policies. I don't know if there was one specifically talked about that would, named, I should say, what you're referring to now, but there is a chain of command. There was a chain of command, and I never broke the chain of command.
Okay, there's a chain of command. You're aware that Advanced Ed said that DeKalb was failing to meet that indicator in that they were violating the chain of command.
And if those words were said in the report, they obviously had a reason for saying them, that we had interviews. I'm saying no one ever said to me that I was violating. I can only be responsible for my actions. I can only work with, whether it's a new board, an old board, I can only work with them to work on any actions that Advanced Ed gives us or public perception, whatever that we need. But I can only be responsible for myself.
Okay.
So yes, I think all of those things are important. I think they are an indication coming from Advanced Ed. The district chose Advanced Ed to credit our schools, credit our district, and yes, we needed to listen to them. I listened. I believe we as a board were working in that direction in order to meet the required actions. Advanced Ed gave us until December 2013 to address the required actions in the report.
Okay.
Never got the opportunity to continue working on those.
So you took responsibility for what you did and nothing else.
I didn't say that. I said a person can only be responsible for themselves.
Okay.
I can't be responsible
But you
for
agreed
other
with
people.
me.
I can only work with other people.
Okay, you
to
can only
be
work
responsible
with
for
other
what
people.
we need to be responsible for.
During your answer, what I understood you to say was that there was a policy committee that undertook to review whether this chain of command issue had been resolved. Is that correct? Is that what you did to implement the policy?
There's a policy committee that was, and by the way, before
Hang
I
on,
was
before we
suspended,
get before we get
eliminated
into
that.
the actual answer,
Uh-huh.
was the implementation of the Advanced Ed recommendation in March 2012, was that limited to that committee reviewing policies?
No, that wasn't one of the. I wasn't the chair at that time. No, of that policy committee.
Okay. What I was asking you is, when Advanced Ed alerted you in March of 2012 that there is a chain of command issue that you yourself had observed at board meetings and had been brought to your attention, What did you do to implement Advance Ed's direction?
Okay, first of all, I never said that I observed a chain of command violation at board meetings.
You were
just said
unaware
that.
of the January 2011 SACS report that said that some board members were communicating inappropriately with district staff?
Yes, and I disagree with that.
Okay, so you were aware of that.
Mhm.
You just disagree with that.
I disagree with that. And
Okay.
can I tell you why, or you just want
Well,
me to say
I just want to know if you were aware of it for right now.
Yes,
What
I'm
we're
aware
talking
of
about
it.
is in March 2012, when Advance Ed comes to you and said there's a chain of command problem, you had in fact heard about that over a year prior. Isn't that right?
Yes.
I'd like to hear why she disagreed with it now.
Okay.
What's on her mind?
Thank you for that, because I'll forget it in a second. But in terms of it, I believe that was, in that report, the reference was to questions being asked of staff members at board meetings. And I believe my interpretation would be that it was felt from Advanced Ed that the questions were too detailed in terms of what was being asked of the staff. Well, the superintendent was the one that had staff report during board meetings. So that's who you're responding to. You're responding to the staff members making the reports, and the superintendent is seated on the dais with us. And of course, if the superintendent felt that there was ever clarification that was needed on a response by a staff member, the superintendent would interject. But that's who you respond to. As a board member, you're responding to the staff. Now, I disagree because I don't know. Now, I agree that there is a way that you question people. You should do it in a respectful manner. You should not badger anybody. But how do you know the information if you have a question unless you ask for the information? But to not ask, I just don't understand how you can vote. I just don't understand that. So, you know, if I were to go back on the board again, I still don't know how you could do that. There's a way of questioning, but again, in order to understand the information, to be able to be an informed board member, you have to ask questions. So I disagree with that. I disagree that you can't ask a question. And I never witnessed a board member asking questions to the administration during a board meeting that I considered to be questioning that was rude or inappropriate. I just honestly don't. And I know I never did that. And I can even remember board members, before they asked a question, saying to a staff member, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to get some information so that I can make an informed decision.
Okay. Related to that, do you remember Advance Ed's concern that at board meetings, based on the videos that they reviewed of the board meetings, that board members were intimidating staff witnesses? They were requiring, or they were viewing them with suspicion and hostility. Do you recall that?
Those
that
words,
concern?
no, but I believe in the report itself, that is something to that effect. I certainly don't remember those words.
Okay. So you recall that general thing being in the report?
In the report, yes.
Okay. And you disagree with the finding of the accreditation agency?
Yes.
Okay. So going back to what we were talking about with honoring the chain of command, that recommendation from Advance Ed, after you had additional notice of that in March 2012, what did you do to correct that issue?
To be quite honest with you, I don't know if we have a policy dealing specifically. I believe we do, but I'm under oath, and so I won't say that we have a policy specifically worded chain of command. But we certainly, during mediation and came up with, talking with Dr. Elgart, he expressed to us what he thought we should be doing in terms of chain of command, making sure that we go through the superintendent prior to talking to staff members, those kinds of things. And so
That's what Dr. Elgart said. What did you do?
I always did that to start with, so I didn't have to do anything, but just make sure that I kept up what I was doing.
Okay. So, in your time as a board member, having been alerted at this point twice to an issue of chain of command, were you concerned by that recommendation? Or by that indication by Advanced Ed?
Surely. Always be concerned with what Advanced Ed said. They were holding our accreditation. Yes.
Okay.
Surely. And I have respect for that organization, but that doesn't mean I can't disagree with them.
Okay, so you disagreed with them, but this brings up serious concern. You as a board member don't want to think that maybe the other board members are communicating improperly. Isn't that right?
That's correct. And I don't disagree with the chain of command. So let me clarify that. I don't disagree with that at all. I'm saying that if I disagree that I witnessed any chain of command violations at board meetings, and I'll even go a step further. When the special review team came in and I was actually interviewed, so this is actually me. Well, I don't know if this is considered hearsay, but this is when I was interviewed, so I'm speaking from what I know.
Okay.
I asked there were two people from Advanced Ed that came to question me. And I asked them specifically, I said, if anything that you're going to ask me, are you asking me about street committee? And by that I mean what you hear, what I've heard just out in the what I hear maybe from the public, those kinds of things. Are you asking me specifics that I am personally aware of? I said, because there is a difference. And I explained to them that certain questions that they asked me, I said, I'm not aware of those things personally. Now, I hear things, well, we all hear things, but again, it's just like in court, you don't want hearsay. You want what you're specifically, that you specifically know about. So I never witnessed that. I honestly didn't.
Okay. What review committee did you implement to ensure that this direction was taken care of?
What review committee did I implement?
Mm-hmm.
None.
Okay. What I take your response to be is if you did not personally observe it, you didn't do anything about it. Is that what you're saying right now?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Because
Okay.
again,
Then just help me and the judge understand this. When Advanced Ed told you that your program has a systemic issue with chain of command in March 2012, what did you do to fix it?
I attended mediation sessions. I talked to individual board members. I served on, when we had standing committees, I served on those committees to give input. I attended all board meetings and never missed one in 4 years. I conducted myself in a manner that I thought would meet the requirements of SACS and also would set an example. I
Okay.
also attempted to run for the chairmanship because I also thought that that's a leadership role, but that didn't work out.
Okay. The things that you did to correct that issue, you would agree with me that the board was not successful in correcting that issue?
I would agree that the board was not successful enough to not warrant, obviously, probation.
So is that a yes or a no? The board was successful in correcting the chain of command issue? Yes or no?
I have to answer it yes or no? I would then have to answer it no, because we were placed on probation.
Okay. So,
But we had until December 31st to write that.
okay. When does your job start?
When does my job start?
Mhm.
I'm not sure I understand.
When
the
did you
question.
begin your duties as a board member?
2009.
2009. Okay. So between 2009 and 2011, Advanced Ed comes in and says, in January 2011, you've got a problem with chain of command. You agree with me?
Yes.
Okay. Another year goes by. Advanced Ed comes back in March of 2012, says you've got a chain of command issue. You agree with me on that?
If that's what they said, yes.
Okay. Another half a year goes by. Advanced Ed comes by in October 2012, says you haven't fixed the chain of command issue. Agree with me on that?
Again, if that's what it says in those documents specifically, then I would have to agree with you.
Okay. And you agreed with me, if probation is the measure of success, then you and the board failed in that regard.
I guess you could measure it that way, yeah.
That's a yes?
But again, I'm saying I've all along been willing to work to right any wrongs in the SACS report,
Okay.
as I believe other board members were doing. We obviously didn't do it to the satisfaction of Advanced Ed.
All right. So you said that you're committed to righting the wrongs. Let's talk about the audit report that KPMG did in December of 2012. Do you recall going before the grand jury to talk to that, to talk about that audit?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall seeing in the grand jury report the statement that the board had difficulty articulating the focal point or the cost of that audit? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Wouldn't that have been an opportunity for you to explain exactly how your particular input and skills were going to help the county?
Well, I wasn't being specifically questioned. We went as a board to the grand jury. I wasn't, or individual board members, and we had made a decision that we would allow the board chair to do most of the talking during the grand jury for unification purposes, which again, that was something that we were also working on, because that had been brought out in various reports that the board did not appear to be unified. So this was another opportunity for us to appear not disjointed, but unified. So the board chair did the bulk of the...
So in that situation... I'm sorry.
Let her finish. Did you finish?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in that situation, you chose to appear that, or you chose to show the grand jury that you didn't know what the point of the audit or the cost of it was for the sake of appearing unified.
No, you're twisting what I'm saying. No,
Well, the grand jury said that the board...
Let her finish.
Well, you know,
Sorry, Your Honor.
the grand jury, they're a group of citizens that want answers. And I respect that, because if I was sitting on the grand jury, I would want it too. There were, not that specific question that you're asking me, but there were things that the grand jury would ask us that would take place in executive session that we couldn't talk about because we're not allowed to do that. No, I never set out, and I would venture to say that no other board member, but I'm not speaking for them, ever set out to make us look like we didn't know something or couldn't explain something or didn't care about something in front of a grand jury. So if that's what you're asking me, no. I'm just stating that to jump in and maybe question, jump in with some information, not even what you're asking, but just that we did not want to appear that we were not unified. And but of course we also wanted to answer truthfully and went in there to do exactly that.
So truthfully, the board did not know how much this audit was going to cost and what it was actually going to do.
I think we knew what it was going to do. I think the findings of the grand jury was that it was not extensive enough, but it was to look at the financial operations of the school district, but it didn't delve far enough in the eyes of the grand jury. And I remember, and tell me if I can say this, because I actually heard the superintendent, the superintendent then say that you get what you pay for. She only had a certain amount of money to pay for an audit in the budget, and so she could only outline certain things that the KPMG would look for. or look at or investigate.
So as a concerned citizen on that grand jury, you only get what you pay for. How much are we spending on that KPMG
She didn't say
audit?
that then. Again, I'm saying that's what she said. In other words, it wasn't a full, this is my opinion now, it wasn't a full or as full of an audit as it could possibly be. But in order to get that, it would have to, the district would have had to pay more money for that. So I believe, and then now that part's hearsay, because it focused in a certain area and asked certain questions, but I believe in the opinion of the grand jury, it did not go far enough.
Based on the statement that I read to you, would you agree with me that the board, of which you were a member, failed to communicate to the members of the grand jury the focal point of the audit or its cost?
If that's what they said we did, then obviously we did not do a good job with that,
Okay.
yes.
And you also acknowledge that although you were concerned about unity on the board, you had the opportunity to fill in the grand jury on those details.
Yes.
You said that the audit wasn't as full of an audit as it could have been, but the report did note 13 different problem areas.
As they wanted it to be, is what I said. As the grand jury
Okay.
wanted it to be.
As it wasn't wanted to be. But the audit did in fact find 13 problem areas that they released. One of those, for example, was the 2011 fiscal year budget that the 2010 board, of which you were a part, passed. Are you familiar with one that I'm referring to?
The overall, as you're
Okay.
asking me, you'd have to be more specific.
Well, specifically, the 2011 budget was supposed to cut 150 or so central office jobs and save the county $9 million. Instead, it cost you an additional $130,000. What went wrong?
To my knowledge, with that budget, there were, I think, 151 positions that were supposed to be cut. The board asked and asked of the administration. That's an administrative responsibility. If the administration knows that the board, and the administration knows this too, that there is a certain amount of money that the district is looking to operate under, and certain areas that we're looking to make adjustments. It's the responsibility of the administration to bring the budget to the Board of Education. And if they tell us that, this goes to the questioning again, if they tell us that 151 positions have been eliminated that would reduce the budget by X amount, we believe that, take it without questioning. If we're not supposed to question, I'm not saying we did that. I'm saying that's what I'm assuming we're supposed to do if you're not supposed to question the administration. You take it verbatim, you take what they say, and you move on. But if you're questioning and asking, did these 151 positions, were they eliminated? And if they tell you yes, and you assume that they were eliminated.
In 2010, when you were looking at this proposed budget, did you ask them questions about how they were getting these numbers?
Yes, and there were explanations each time. And then as it continued on, something would pop up that would make someone question again.
Okay. Did you review the numbers for that budget?
Yes,
In particular, these salaries?
yes.
Did you notice anything unusual about the salaries when you were reviewing those numbers and asking questions?
It was kind of difficult to see which salaries went with what positions. That was something that the superintendent was working on. She was working on a plan that would, I can't remember the title off the top of my head now, but it was a plan that would put all of the positions in some sort of category, so that you would be able to see that it would be standard throughout, that people could not come in and apply for a position and get a salary that wasn't part of what was outlined. For example, if you came in and applied for a Secretary 2, then that Secretary 2 position had a starting and an ending salary. And that if you came in for that position, you would fall somewhere in there. And it couldn't arbitrarily, that you could not arbitrarily get a certain salary that was outside that category.
Do you recall that in the KPMG report, they noted that the district didn't use the actual salaries, the things that you're talking about. Instead, the district used an average salary that was $15,000 to $25,000 higher than the actual salary. Do you recall KPMG?
That's what I'm saying. I'm explaining it differently, that it would be more arbitrary and it shouldn't be that way. So that's the superintendent at that time took on the responsibility of trying to rectify that wrong. That was in place long before I became a board member.
So because it was in place before you were a board member, you didn't need to fix that? Because that was one of the other issues Advanced Ed brought up as well.
I just said to you that was something that the superintendent took on as a goal to rectify that.
Okay. Only after the taxpayers of DeKalb County was put on the hook for an extra $130,000.
She started her rectification as soon as she came on board, after her 90 days. That was part of her 90-day plan. After she came in and had the opportunity to see what was going on, talk to people in all departments, that's what she attempted to do. So it was before any report came out, but all of these things were being put in place. As a matter of fact, when the district received their rating from, or ranking from Advanced Ed of, this is before probation, which was, I believe it was accreditation warning. One of the reasons in the summary findings was the reason we received the warning was because even though there were a lot of good things that were about to take place with the new superintendent coming in, and I'm not talking about the present superintendent, I'm talking about the one before, that there wasn't enough time for any implementation of those things as yet because she just hadn't been there long enough. So even though it was on paper, the implementation piece had not taken place yet. So that's why we had the warning.
I hate to keep taking you backwards, but thank you very much for your explanations. Going back to that KPMG report, the problem that KPMG found was that the district used an average salary that was far higher than the actual salaries. When you were reviewing those numbers, did it strike you as odd that 150 employees all had a uniformly high salary?
Yes, and the question was asked, and even asked if 100 and again, those were things that were going to be looked at as the administration, because again, the board doesn't set those salaries. Administration does that, so that's why you question the administration in terms of salary, qualifications, all of that. That's administration. And if you, as a board member, get into that stuff, you're micromanaging.
Did you actually think that all of those employees were making that same amount of salary?
I honestly, no. I honestly, and the report was an eye-opener, yes.
Not the report. We're talking about in 2010, when you're sitting there with this budget, asking people questions, looking at the numbers, and getting ready to vote on it to pass it. You found it odd that the salaries were the same. And you didn't think that they were actually the same. Is that what you're saying?
Again, when a budget is presented from the administration to the board, it's not presented like you're talking, that you're looking at actual salaries next to a person's name or a person's position. That's not how it's presented to you. It's presented as a budget with certain categories, and that's what you're voting on. You're voting on the budget, not the individual categories like you're talking about.
So
That's
you're
not
just-
how it's presented.
Based on what you're telling me, then you're just voting on a total number, up or down?
Yes, you're voting on the passing of yes, the
Okay.
number, and you ask questions. You look at certain categories that are, but it's not broken down. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's not broken down the way you're talking about.
Is there a committee that addresses something like this?
There's a budget committee. There was a budget committee. I don't think there are any standing committees anymore, and that was also a recommendation of SACS that we not have standing committees, because I think we were one of the few in the state that still had them. So they're gone, and that you go to a committee of the whole, that there was no need to have.
Do you recall why, I'm sorry.
No.
Do you recall why Advance Ed said that you were not supposed to have standing committees like that?
I don't think they said you weren't supposed to have it. I think they said that they didn't recommend that we have that because, yes, and I think I know the reason for that. And let me say that in 2009, when I became a board member, I had to go for training, and I and another board member questioned at the training and asked different districts, did they have committees, and all of them said no.
Going back
But wait a minute,
to your answer.
Can I finish? And this other board member brought it back to DeKalb and said, and to the chair, and said, I don't think we need any committees. And the reason for that is because it's a duplication of efforts. When you have a standing committee, you are not making decisions about a policy, for example. All you're doing is listening to the staff present the policy, why they're making certain recommendations for changes in the policy. Other board members have the opportunity to give feedback about that. But as a committee, you can't make any decisions. So then you then turn around and take that same information, or that same information was taken, and the staff presented it at a board meeting to the board as a whole. So why not just present it to the board as a whole to start with? Why do you have to go to why do you start with a committee? So that, I believe, is the rationale for not having committees. It's a duplication of it, and you can't make a decision anyway.
Okay. So the same issue that Advanced Ed brought to your attention is the reason that your board in 2010 passed a budget that didn't reflect any actual savings for these employee positions. Isn't that right?
It didn't reflect any savings for the employee positions. What do you mean by that?
The KPMG report found that, contrary to the board's assertion that the 2011 cuts would save $11 million, it actually ended up costing you $120,000 more.
I don't think that that's accurate. I honestly don't.
Okay. We'll just stick with that. You think that the KPMG financial audit is inaccurate.
I didn't say
Let's
that.
go on.
That's not what I said. You just asked me a specific question, and I said I didn't think what you were asking me was accurate.
Very well. That portion of the KPMG report, the financial audit, you do not believe that is accurate.
I don't think that those numbers are accurate. No.
Okay. Let's go on to the issue of nepotism. Do you believe that, or do you agree that a lot of people in the community believe that DeKalb has a bad track record of hiring friends and family for jobs instead of a merit-based situation?
Yes.
Why do you think that perception exists?
Because I believe that there were employees in the system that it was felt that they received their positions based on the fact that they were a relative or a friend of, I would say, not just board members, but board members would be included in there, of people in higher positions. That was the perception, yes.
So it was felt. Do you agree
Yes.
that there was an issue with nepotism in DeKalb?
My understanding is I certainly did not go through all of the personnel records to see their relationship with but the board worked on that. That was in a policy that says that any hiring of an employee, I believe it was at the superintendent's position and above, would have to be brought before the board and voted on, because the way it used to be presented was the board would get on a monthly basis a list, and DeKalb is a huge system. It would be a list of employees to be hired. The report included other things as well. And there was never a distinction made as to this was a relative of a superintendent or a relative of a board member or something like that. So the change that occurred was that any that had to be noted and had to be pulled out, in a sense, couldn't be embedded in the report, so that when a vote was taken, board members would know that these people were relatives of a board member or a superintendent and could make a decision as to whether they would vote yea or nay.
The policy that you're referring to, that was reported back to Advanced Ed in May of 2013. Is that right?
I have to take your word for that.
Okay. You'd agree with me that the issue of nepotism, of which you agree that there was an issue,
There was a perceived issue.
Okay. Then let's be clear. Do you think, as a member of the board, having lots of information coming to you, seeing the information that comes to your fellow board members and seeing your other board members, do you think there is an issue with nepotism in DeKalb County?
I can say that I have heard that. If I don't know how to say it to you without saying hearsay. Did I look at without it being hearsay?
Maybe I can clarify. I'm not asking you to say what you said, what you heard. I'm asking you, do you personally, as someone who is on the board, feel that there is an issue with nepotism and has been an issue in DeKalb County?
I would say more has been than there is.
Okay, so you do agree with me that there was a issue with nepotism in DeKalb?
Yeah, but that I'm talking about was before 2009.
Okay. When did you come to that realization that there was an issue with nepotism?
When I would hear things, and then we would, it was more hearsay. That's what I'm saying. I never, to date, I couldn't tell you of, and I want to be honest, so I don't want to, be absolute, but I don't think I could name somebody that I know personally, that is a relative of a superintendent or a board member. Personally, I don't, but I've heard that is the case.
So are you telling me that as a board member, you are going to wait until you have concrete evidence right in front of you before you take action to change the issue?
No, I'm not telling you that at all. That's why I'm telling you that there was steps put into place to make sure that those perceptions, if they were actually reality, did not continue to occur, by making sure that anybody that was on that monthly human resources list that came in, that we would know, and it was actually a section, is anybody in here related to a board member? And it would be from 2009, I'm again trying to recall back, it would be no. Or maybe once there might have been a person that may have been related to someone that was, above a principal, and that had to be brought out. And I'm not even sure that that's the case. So yes, there were steps that were taken. I didn't wait, nor did the board wait, or I didn't wait. You asked me specifically. I didn't wait to find out that had taken place before any action was taken. Steps were put into place to make sure that it wouldn't happen.
Okay. At the beginning of your answer, you said perceived nepotism. Do you agree I thought I heard you say a second ago that there was a nepotism issue.
I said that I believe I could say that there was, prior to, again, it's perception, what I'm hearing. I certainly didn't have access to any actual human resources records to say, well, I know for sure that this person was related to this person and got the job over someone else. Now, a person could get a job and be highly qualified for the job and related to someone. Just being related to someone doesn't mean that you're not qualified. There would be something wrong with that if the person got the job based on any influence by a board member or a superintendent. That's where it would be wrong. But again, that's human resources, that's administration.
Okay. I'm obviously having some difficulty understanding it. Tell me as clearly as you can and as briefly as you can. Do you believe there is a nepotism problem in DeKalb? Do you believe there was? And when did you become aware of it?
I believe that there has, for as long as I can, there's been a perceived nepotism. I worked for the district for 25 years, and
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Is it a perceived
yeah, you didn't
nepotism
say
issue,
perceived. You said
or
an
is
issue.
Is it a perceived issue, or is it an issue?
Perceived issue. I can't unequivocally say that I know for sure that it is an issue. It is definitely a perceived issue, and steps were put in place as when I was a board member to make sure that those things, those perceptions would be, number one, minimized, but that also the board would be aware of any kind of hiring of personnel that were related to, from the superintendent up.
Okay.
And that's in a policy.
I'd like to read to you from the Advanced Ed Report, October 2012, on its Exhibit 5, page 7, where they said, one example includes an email dated August 24th, 2012, from the board chair to the superintendent, containing the subject line, candidate for TAP program. The email from the board chair to the superintendent read in part, "This is the individual I refer to the program that I asked you about. With his strong background and personal demeanor, I feel that he would be a great candidate to work with our kids." Skipping a little bit, please know that I have met this young man and he is the brother of one of our board. I would appreciate any assistance that you could provide. Was there a nepotism issue in DeKalb County?
Are you asking me that question again based on what you just read there?
Does that change your answer?
I can't say yet. Can I say, no, I mean, I read that, so I know that existed, but you're not reading anything that was new to me. Again, I know who they're talking about because I know who the board chair was at that time. Okay, they're not talking about me. But also, I wasn't copied on that email to say that I would know that that was taking place and could run in and do anything about it. I am aware of it just like you're aware of it based on reading it in the report. So my opinion, and if I'm not mistaken, that was sent to the superintendent, right? The superintendent, if the superintendent felt that that was something that a board member should not do, I wouldn't have done that. The superintendent should have brought it to the rest of the board so that the board could have done something about it. It never came to any of us. I didn't know a thing about that until it was in the report.
I missed your answer. Based on that I just read to you, does that change your answer on whether there was a nepotism issue in DeKalb County? Yes or no? And then you can explain.
Does that change? No, it doesn't change my answer because I don't know, and maybe you can tell me, was that person hired? The person that's being referred to in that email, was that person hired? If they weren't hired, then
I think you just need to say you don't know whether or not that person was hired.
I don't know whether that person was hired or not.
Okay.
I don't know.
Mr. Bradbury's not testifying.
As a board member,
And can I say one other thing?
go right ahead.
I mean, well,
Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, never mind. I was going to say, to get clarification about that, you need to talk to the person who sent the email.
As a board member, what is the threshold upon which you will take personal action as a board member?
Repeat that again, please.
As a board member, what is the threshold of information that you will take action as part of your board duties?
I as a board member, cannot be a rogue board member. I am part of a board of 9, and I have to work as a board member as part of that 9. I am an individual person with individual ideas, individual questions, and as an individual, I have to ask those questions so that I can get the information that I need in order to make an informed decision. And if I am made privy to any information, I will ask those questions of the appropriate personnel in order, being the superintendent, because I'm not going to any individual staff members because that's not allowed to do that. So when I say that, I'm talking about the superintendent, to ask any questions, and then of course the superintendent could lead me to, if that was the choice, or the superintendent could handle it. So as soon as I'm made aware of something.
Okay. But you just said that, well, strike that. What sort of information do you rely on in reaching that threshold you just spoke about?
Information that I received from the superintendent in our meeting, the board meeting packets.
Okay.
Anything that's provided, you know. Anything that we're given to make a decision.
How about an accrediting agency?
Yes. SACS, yeah, that's our accreditation.
SACS told you in January 2011 that DeKalb had a nepotism issue. Isn't that right? SACS told you in December 2011 there was a nepotism issue. Isn't that right? SACS told you in March 2012 there was a nepotism issue. Isn't that right? SACS told you in October of 2012 that there was a nepotism issue. Isn't that right?
So if it's in the report, then yes.
While you were on the board, you were placed on accredited advisement.
Yes.
Over a year and a half later, your assistant was placed on accredited probation. Tell me where in that timeline the threshold for Pamela Speaks to solve the nepotism issue happens.
Okay. Pam Speaks alone as a sole board member can't solve anything. I can work with I can work with the other 8 board members to attempt to solve, and we did. We started with the administration. We started the process to answer those required actions, and from all of those reports that you named, the last one, I think we had 2. Well, we got additional required actions, but we had 2 more left to work on from the past reports. So all along the way, we were working on those.
If Pam Speaks alone cannot solve anything, why should this gentleman recommend that you be back on the board?
Because I can work with the other board members. The other board members alone can't solve anything either. And I hope they don't think that. But I'm here to tell you that that's the case. They can't solve all of the ills of DeKalb County or any other county by themselves. That's why I'm assuming there were 9 board members elected to represent the district. So alone, no one can solve all of the problems, but you have to be in a frame of mind that you're willing to work with the other board members, however many are seated, to do just that, that you're going to take the job of a board member seriously. If SACS is our agency that we work with, we have to take them seriously, have to take their recommendations seriously. When mediation was recommended, I attended every mediation session, worked toward meeting the challenges, meeting what was discussed during those meetings, went back after the mediation sessions to work with the other members of the board, the administration, to the best of my ability. But I alone can't solve anything.
You had 2 years to try. Would you agree with me that you failed as a member of the board to get the board to take care of the nepotism issue?
No, I won't agree that I failed with anything. If you're asking me, did the board fail? And in the advanced ed report, they said that we had, that was an area we still had to work on, then yes, I agree with you, that they were not satisfied with the work that we were doing. But again, we had until December 13th to still answer some of those, all of those required actions, and hopefully to meet. Now, you might say, well, let the new board have a chance. I'm saying I did what I was supposed to do while I was on that board. And if there were people who didn't, talk to those people. But I felt that I needed to be here to defend myself, because I didn't do anything that would cause this district, or the district, to lose its accreditation.
At the beginning of your testimony, you said that you take responsibility for the actions of the board. You just said that you're part of a board of 9.
Yes.
Do you take responsibility for the failures of this board?
Yes. As a whole, yes. As a whole, I can't. Again, if I'm in a car and a car hits someone, I'm not driving, but a car hits someone. Do I take the responsibility of the driver that hit someone? No. Do I take the responsibility that I'm sitting in a car that hit? I'm in the car. So yes, I guess I have to do it that way. But do I like that? No. And usually, if you went to court, the person who hit someone, they're talking to the driver. They're not talking to the person who was just sitting in the car. I feel, as part of the suspended number, that I then took the responsibility. I took the hit as well, and I just couldn't sit back and let that happen. But am I trying to say that I hold no responsibility at all? That I have a clean slate in terms of, I'm just a total victim? No, I'm not saying that. But it needs to be recognized that no one has yet to tell me what I did personally, so that I could go back, if I were to be put back on the board, to say, I know what it says in the reports, and I would do my darndest to make sure that I'm working with the other board members to make sure that we do whatever is necessary in order to right the wrongs as outlined in the advanced ed report. I definitely would do that, and then continue doing what I did before, which is to work with the other board members, whoever those board members may be.
As one of 9 members on the board, said you take some responsibility, but not all. Is that right?
I can only take responsibility for what I do personally, but as a board member seated on the board during that time, I guess I have to, yes.
would it be fair to say we can apportion you a ninth of the blame?
No, I won't take that either. You can blame me for being seated on the board at the wrong time when the board lost their when the board was placed on probation. That I am guilty of, and take full responsibility for that. That's where I placed myself. I ran for election both times, so yes, I'll take responsibility for that.
As part of your responsibilities, DeKalb was put on accredited advisement and accredited probation under your watch. Is that right?
Yes, I was seated during that time. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Speaks, we have a thing called redirect examination, and you're entitled to, if you have counsel, they could stand up and ask you questions again. So we're going to give you that opportunity, but I think in light of we've been going at it over an hour and 15 minutes, we're going to recess this hearing and come back at 11:45 by that clock, give you a chance to think about anything else you want to tell me on this matter, because I don't want you leaving and then thinking, oh, I wish I'd have said this, that, or the other. So we'll take a break, let you gather your thoughts. We'll come back at 11:45 and renew a functionally a redirect examination, and if necessary, a recrawl.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity,
Yes, ma'am.
because you're right. You do think of,
Sure.
of things that don't come to you right away. Mr. Sandsbury, I'm sorry, do I have the right
Yeah,
name?
Mr. Willard and Mr. Bradbury.
You were
I'm
asking.
Bradbury.
Yeah, Bradbury, okay. Mr. Bradbury, could you tell me if I'm allowed to?
Now
do
you
this?
can't examine him.
No,
okay?
no.
Okay.
I
You
was just going
testify.
to ask him to, to reread, if necessary, the email. It was the last thing that we were discussing. The email from the board chair.
This would assist you in your testimony?
Well.
If it'll assist you in your testimony, certainly he would read it for you.
Well, I mean, we can provide it to the witness. It's
Okay.
already been admitted into evidence.
That's fine. That's fine.
I just wanted
May I
to.
approach you?
Yes, please. Can you point to her exactly where that is?
Okay. Yes, this was the, as you were intimating, interference in hiring considerations, and it was an email dated August 24th, 2012, from the board chair to the superintendent, containing the subject line candidate for TAP program. And it was the email from the board chair to the superintendent, read in part, "This is an individual I referred to the program that I asked you about. With his strong background and personal demeanor, I feel that he would be a great candidate to work with our kids in our schools while filling one of our critical needs areas."
What page is that on?
It's on page 7.
7.
Page
That's
7
Exhibit 5.
D.
of Exhibit 5. All right, thank you.
That I just wanted to state that this email, that the person that was recommended, because when I heard it, it seemed like it was the relative of a board member that was recommended. And that person that was recommended was not a relative of a board member, but was the brother of the board chair. And, I'm sorry, a member of the board secretary, a relative of the board secretary, not a relative of a board member. So I wanted to clarify that, and I still don't know if that person was ever hired. That I don't know. In regards to the nepotism policy, we have a policy, and I believe it's policy GAG. And Mr. Bradbury, I don't know if you have that, but again, that was developed as a response to the perceived, as I mentioned, nepotism that outlined, and it's outlined from the assistant principal, I believe, up. I think I said superintendent, but I believe it's assistant principal. And as I mentioned before, these individuals have to be pulled out if they are going to be hired, so that before a board member makes casts a vote, that they know who these people are. And I believe also in that policy that if they are not disclosed and it's found out later that they would be a relative of a board member and they were not pulled out, so that board members before voting would know this, that they could be terminated. So again, these were all things that while I was actually seated on the board, we did to address perceived nepotism and, well, it would be nepotism, perceived nepotism. Also, you asked me questions about the budget and the salaries of employees. I just wanted to say that there were several instances that I could recall where board members asked the superintendent to pull those salaries out. I was explaining that they were not listed the way that you were thinking in terms of the person's name, position, and salary were outlined so that the board would know that. That's not how it was presented. And it was asked on several occasions for that breakdown. I just want to make sure that I did say that. I don't think I did. That and the board never got that information. Never got it. And if it was asked for several times, not received, the next time a board meeting took place, the question was asked again, and it's like, where is the information? That might be perceived as hammering, but if you're asking over and over again, so that you could be an informed board member before you cast a vote, and you're not getting the information, well, then what do you do? And I think, what happens is you make the best of your circumstances, and you either try to find out the information, not by micromanaging, I don't mean that, but by asking questions to get the information that you need before you cast a vote. And just the very last thing, and I said this before, I do take responsibility for being a board member during the time that the district was placed on probation. But if you look through the record of my votes, there were votes that I made that, as time progressed, it probably would have been votes that would have been approved by SACS. But majority rules. Again, we only have one vote each, and majority, 5 gets it, regardless of what it is. And you have to live with that and also be supportive of the board. Not just live with it, but also be supportive as a member of the board once that vote is taken and passed. And that's it.
Any recross?
Nothing further.
All right, thank you very much. You have a seat, Dr. Speaks.
Your Honor, may I approach it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just going to bring it
Dr. Speaks, do you have any other witnesses you wish to call to testify?
down.
Okay, I've got your written statements from Nancy Jester, Paul Womack, and
Don McChesney.
Don,
And he's
excuse me.
here if you want to.
That's up to you. It's up to you. The written can suffice theoretically, but that strategically, that's up to you.
Okay. Can I call Don McChesney?
Uh,
Now, do I have to ask him specifics, or just to ask him, is there anything, and this is what I would ask him, and you tell me if this is...
Well, let's call him up and go from there.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Mhm.
I would point out that we exchanged witness list 5 days prior to the hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McChesney was not listed as a witness. We haven't had the opportunity to prepare a cross-examination of him. We would object to his testimony. He has submitted a statement. It was our understanding from talking to Dr. Speaks that was all that she was going to be submitting from this, Mr. McChesney.
Is he going to say anything more than this?
I don't know, but that's okay. I'm fine. I am fine. I just wanted you to know that he is here. He can collaborate.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have to give him some notice.
Yeah.
of
Okay,
that.
that's
I mean,
fine.
that's
That's fine with me.
valid point. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. All right. Any other documents, Dr. Speaks?
No, I just have a closing statement when it's time.
All right. That time is not, we're not there yet. I now turn to the Attorney General's office. Do you have